Good evening and welcome to News Central TV. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now the top stories this hour. National Assembly approves President Tinubu's declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State. And coalition of opposition political leaders announces merger, opposes declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State. Also coming up, M23 rebels seize key mining town in eastern DR Congo. Details coming up shortly. Now let's begin with updates on the emergency rule in Rivers State. The Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's proclamation of a state of emergency in Rivers State following deliberations during a closed-door session. The approval grants the president the authority to enforce emergency measures in the crisis-hit state while also paving the way for mediation efforts to restore peace. Upon returning from the closed-door session, Senate President Godswill Akpabio announced the Senate's decision to approve President Tinubu's request for a state of emergency in Rivers State. The Senate further resolved that the enforcement of emergency measures will be subject to review at any time but no later than 6 months. And now in similar vein, the House of Representatives has approved the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State along with the 6-month suspension of Governor Sims Fubara and his deputy as well, and all elected members of the Assembly, as announced by President Bola Tinubu. The seal of approval for the President's proclamation came via voice vote during plenary on Thursday. The Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas, who presided over the plenary, called on members to make their contributions during the consideration of the general principles of the President's report.
I put the question. I want the House to note that today's plenary is being attended by 243 members based on our attendance registers. Just for records, we are more than satisfied the requirement of this particular amendment. So, honorable colleagues, with your kind permission, I put the question. Those in support of this motion should say aye. Those in support should say aye. Those in support should say aye. Those against should say nay. There is have it. Thank you. Leader of the next week. It's done? No, we only vote for adoption of the votes and procedures.
In the meantime, the sole administrator for Rivers State, retired Vice Admiral Iboketek Ibas, has arrived in the state to resume duties. Ibas arrived at the Port Harcourt International Airport at about 11:25 a.m. on Thursday and was received by top officials and security personnel. The sole administrator, accompanied by the State Commissioner of Police, Olugbenga Adepoju, and the Assistant Inspector General of Police Zone 16, immediately proceeded to Government House, Port Harcourt, afterwards. He was sworn in on Wednesday by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Abuja.
I have to talk to you guys. I want to thank you also for what you've been doing so far. You're all aware I just got in here and decided to meet with the head of service and the permanent secretaries and the service commanders. I'm going to have to meet with them to get the formal briefings from all those I met this afternoon, and then I believe it is only proper for me thereafter to have something to say to you all. And I assure you that perhaps later this evening I'll be in the right position to address you and then to address the issues that you may want to raise now. Port Harcourt is my city. Everything appears calm, and though I know that the situation is there, but we just want Port Harcourt to get back to the way it has always been. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, a coalition of opposition political leaders, including former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Governor of Kaduna State Nasir El-Rufai, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation Babachir Lawal, and several Labour Party leaders have announced a political merger while strongly opposing the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State. Speaking at a briefing in Abuja on Thursday, The coalition of opposition political leaders condemned President Bola Tinubu's decision, calling it unconstitutional. The group argued that the constitutional provision relied upon by the president to justify the state of emergency had been wrongly applied.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, our demand and call to action. Number one, immediate reversal. We call on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to immediately revoke this unconstitutional proclamation and reinstate the elected governor, deputy governor, and state assembly of Rivers State. Two, National Assembly reduction. We call on patriotic senators and representatives to vote against this illegal action when it comes before them for approval. The National Assembly must stand on the right side of history and not allow itself to be used to legitimize an unconstitutional power grab. Three, judicial intervention. We urge the judiciary to act swiftly in striking down this proclamation, as it sets a dangerous precedent that could be used to arbitrarily remove any governor in the future. I am very happy to read the ruling of a judge in Rivers State which directed a status quo. Number four, Nigerians must defend democracy. It's not only the responsibility of the opposition to defend democracy. It's the responsibility of all Nigerians, all of you, to defend democracy. Otherwise, there won't be a Nigeria. We call on all civil society organizations, political groups, and Nigerians of good conscience to stand firm in the defense of this democracy that we all have toiled to build. Rivers State is not a conquered territory, and Nigeria is not a dictatorship requiring the replacement of an elected governor with a military administrator.
Your Excellency, sir, my name is Amadine Uyi. I'm with New Central Television. Sir, this coalition speaking against events in Rivers State. The last time we have seen representatives from the major opposition parties, the PDP, the SDP, and the Labour Party. We know that in politics, sometimes it takes one event for politicians to rise up in unison to say enough is enough. And the last time we saw this kind of coalition was prior to the 2015 general elections. Sir, are we seeing this united front go ahead into the 2027 general election, thus assuming is the birth of a major opposition against the APC? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
To discuss this, we are joined by political analyst, that's Deji Ajare. He is the Executive Director, Sterling Center for Law. Deji, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, or rather this evening. My apologies.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Now, Deji, given that the Nigerian Bar Association has labeled the removal of Governor Siminalayi Fubara and other elected officials as unconstitutional, how do you assess the constitutional legitimacy of the state of emergency declared in Rivers State?
I must state that I align myself with the position of the Nigerian Bar Association. The declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers and the subsequent suspension of duly elected public officials, the governor, the deputy, and the entire State House of Assembly. It is not only unconstitutional, but I think it is a direct assault on the principles, on the core principles of democracy and the rule of law. And it should concern everybody who is interested in the democratic development of our nation. Now, why do I say this is unconstitutional first? the Constitution makes specific provisions for the only way that an elected governor or deputy governor can be removed from office for whatever reason. The president cannot arrogate to himself the powers of removal or suspension of a governor. In fact, I find it quite funny that the president, who for some of us have actually been hailing as, trying to steer the affairs of local administration appropriately, particularly with the approach, with the government approaching the Supreme Court last year for interpretation on the position of governors removing local government chairmen who were validly elected. And after taking that kind of position, how then can you now find that same government believing that it is empowered by the Constitution to remove elected governors? I think it is just a barefaced, hypocritical understanding of the constitutional provisions. While the president, no doubt, has the powers to declare a state of emergency, it does not have powers to remove validly elected public officials. And I will even proceed to even state that, in my opinion, I do not think that the situation in Rivers State is such that it is so dire that it qualifies as one of those situations anticipated by the Constitution, by Section 305 of the Constitution, for a declaration of emergency. The situation as at yesterday, when this state of emergency was declared, is not so exceptional. It is not so dire, so grave, that I think it justifies a declaration of state of emergency.
Okay then, Deji.
Yes, of course,
Deji, I'd also like to introduce our other analyst. Just a second, Deji. Deji, we have another analyst here with us, and that is Nelson Ikujimi. He's also joining us, and I'd like to ask him a few questions. By the way, thank you for mentioning Section 305 of the Constitution there. Now, so Deji, what are your thoughts on the approval by the Senate of the state of emergency?
Well, I was very honest with you.
My apologies. My apologies, Deji. That question was meant for Nelson. My apologies. Nelson,
right.
Your thoughts on the declaration and the approval by the Senate? Nelson, please go ahead. Nelson, I'm okay, good.
Approval by the House of Representatives. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
The approval by the Senate and the House of Representatives is in consonance with the provisions of the law. Section 305 of the Constitution, stipulates that the president has the powers to proclaim a state of emergency, and that if the Senate and the House of Representatives is in session, he has that authority to transmit that proclamation to the two chambers of the National Assembly, to ratify that decision. And if they disapprove of it, then, the proclamation will not stand. So the Senate and the House of Representatives merely performed their constitutional functions as enshrined in our Constitution.
Nelson, hang on a second, but from what we saw from yesterday, the sole administrator actually was already asked to go on with his duties, even before the Senate ratified. So what do you say to that?
Well, the powers to proclaim and to appoint the sole administrator is vested in Mr. President, and the ratification from the National Assembly is just to give a legal backing to whatever Mr. President has done in the exercise of his presidential function. So if the National Assembly, in their wisdom, because when the president transmits the proclamation to the National Assembly, he is duty bound to go and explain to them the reason why they should ratify that decision. And if the president has taken a step to protect life and property in a state, it is only natural that he must take the first step of securing life and property, which is the raison d'etre of government. And the National Assembly will now complement whatever he has done. And again, I want to quickly respond to the other person or the other guest. He said the situation in Rivers State was not dire enough to warrant a proclamation of a state of emergency. I beg to disagree. You know why? I think that amounts to usurpation of functions. Under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the only authority that has powers to determine the situation that will warrant the proclamation of a state of emergency in our Constitution is the president and not just a mere citizen. You don't have the information, you don't have the intelligence that is on the table of Mr. President. And that is why some of us kicked against the press release by the Nigerian Bar Association, trying to usurp a position that the law has not entrusted. We operate a constitutional democracy. So you cannot say because you are a citizen, a president that the Constitution has given powers to do something, you are now querying that it is not enough. The president do not owe you the explanation of why he's doing it. He owes the National Assembly that is our representative, and we have all seen it, that the reasons why Mr. President, declared the state of emergency has been confirmed by the ratification.
All right, just a second, Mr. Kujimi.
And again,
no, just a second, Mr. Kujimi. Mr. Kujimi, just a second. Now, we have very little time. I would like Deji to actually give you a response to that. However, Deji, I would also like you to put this into your consideration. Is it ratification before appointment or appointment before ratification? You may go ahead and reply to Mr. Nelson's submission there. Go ahead, Deji.
The president will make the appointment, because the president will make the appointment, and within 48 hours, within 2 days, the National Assembly has the powers to ratify the actions of the president. So yes, that is not in doubt. As regards the propriety of citizens querying or questioning the actions of the president, I think my brother here, he has misunderstood the entire foundational principles of democracy. If I, as a citizen, cannot query the president, then we do not have a democracy. We do not have a democracy. It is my responsibility. It is even a civic duty to query the actions of the president. And let me tell you, the fact that the president took that action does not necessarily mean that he is correct, he is right. It can be challenged in court. Unfortunately, I don't know if those who are interested may want to do that. But now, let me now proceed and tell you further. If the president is, if he has information that gives him that confidence that, look, the situation is that dire, he also owes the citizens a duty. The president does not have the powers to just operate as anyhow he likes. He owes the citizens a duty. Now, let me tell you the risk with us arrogating that extent of power to the president. What it simply means is that if the president is unhappy with any governor, he can simply just, just in the past 15 years in Nigeria, we have witnessed so much activities in the northwest, in the northeast, so much violence. Are you telling me that the kind of violence, for instance, that was witnessed in Zamfara exceeds that we experienced in the past couple of days in Rivers State? I do not think so. So, I mean, what it simply means is that if the president is unhappy with Zamfara, with that, he could just declare a state of emergency. What it means is that the governors will simply become, they will become, in fact, they will stand the risk of losing their seat. So we should not encourage the arrogation of powers that do not exist in the Constitution to the president.
Thank you very much, Deji.
All of this, it is also important for us to now ask ourselves, as the president, and this is a question of perception, has he demonstrated, that level of fairness in the entire River State scenario? I do not think so. In fact, the speech of the president is suspect. It makes one suspect that indeed the president has already taken sides, because everybody who has been following the events in River State knows that the key principal players are the governor of River State, Sim Fubara, and Wike, who is a minister appointed by the president. In the president's speech, he put all of the blame for these problems on Sim, while not mentioning his minister, Wike. I think that already is indicating that, look, he has taken a position, he has taken sides in that dispute. And if I were to speak on that, I would be very uncomfortable that indeed this man can bring about a fair an unbiased solution to the problem.
All right then, Deji. Deji, now let me come to Mr. Nelson here. Nelson, one has to wonder whether the legislature has exhausted all responsibility when it comes to their dealings with the governor. And also, regarding that, and perhaps maybe the case of an impending impeachment that might have happened, do you think that the president actually saved the governor from an impeachment with this move of a declaration of a state of emergency? Mr. Ekujimi, please. We seem to be having issues with Mr. Nelson Ekujimi's connection here, but Deji, I'm hoping you heard that question there regarding the state of emergency versus impeachment. Do you think that this school of thought, which people have bandied about, is correct?
To be fair, I have also heard such thoughts and opinions that, in fact, it was the president's way of saving the governor from being impeached. If that is so, while Mr. Fubara may be thankful that he has been saved, but I still think that it is important for us. You see, the issues we're dealing with is not just rivers. This issue goes beyond rivers. We're looking at, you know, an entire system, an entire political system. Now, if because, oh, this would save the day today, we allow some sort of precedent that is inappropriate and unconstitutional to fester, the problem, we will have to deal with it tomorrow. So it is always important, irrespective of what the outcome will be, that the Constitution is followed to the letter, and its spirit too. And I think the spirit of the Constitution is that the president does not have powers to remove any governor who has been validly elected. And it is on this basis that I think, okay, the president's action was hasty, it was unconstitutional, and again, like I have opined earlier, he has the powers, of course, to declare a state of emergency. But I do not think the situation, even though it was fully politically charged, but I don't think it was that serious as to warrant a state of emergency. We have had situations in states in Nigeria that are even more charged than that, and yet states of emergencies were not declared, and we were able to overcome. I suspect that indeed it is the problem is that there is no fairness in reaching that decision. And it is important that the judiciary acts to strike down this unlawful declaration and prevent the abuse of power that could ultimately undermine our democracy.
Deji Ajare, I want to say thank you very much, and also thank you to Nelson Ekujimi, even if we lost him there. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now we're going to a short break. When we come back, Ministers of Interior and Foreign Affairs have presented their performance scorecards. We'll give you details after the break. Now, the Ministers of Interior and Foreign Affairs have presented their performance scorecards highlighting key achievements in security and diplomacy. Foreign Affairs Minister Yusuf Tugar underscored Nigeria's strengthened diplomatic ties, increased foreign investments, and also growing influence on the global stage. He reassured citizens of the government's commitments to fostering international partnerships and also ensuring regional stability. At the briefing, the Interior Minister outlined improvements in border security, immigration reforms, and also energy or emergency response systems.
When I say redeeming Nigeria's image abroad, I'm talking about compensating for any faults that we may have projected. And I think we've succeeded in that thus far. But so the next stage is really to exalt and glorify Nigeria's image abroad. In terms of redemption, we now have a good image. I'm confident to say that. The dignity of Nigerian citizens in other countries. And by having a zero tolerance for the humiliation of Nigerians anywhere in the world. And it doesn't matter how high or how low. It can be Victor Osimhen trying to be rubbish or trying to be prejudiced towards, and it can be somebody who is lonely, living in a country outside Nigeria.
They have a command and control center for a country, the biggest country in Africa, over 230 million people, and there is no command and control center for migration management. security checklists and database everywhere in the world on real-time basis. And what is the result? Just 2 days ago, somebody on the red list of Interpol was apprehended in Abuja just because of the command. Last week, somebody on the red list again of Interpol wanted in Ireland at the point of entry was apprehended right in Lagos International Airport.
A section of Ibira indigenes in Kogi State have strongly condemned insinuations that the recall process against Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, who represents Kogi Central, does not enjoy the support of the majority of the electorate in the area. The indigenes from across the 5 local governments of Kogi Central said they had resolved to bring the embattled senator back home, adding that the embarrassment she had caused the senatorial district had unfortunately taken an international dimension. This stand was taken in a statement on Thursday, jointly signed by the President and Secretary of the Kogi Central Elites Forum, Alhaji Ibrahim Abdulaziz. Ibrahim and Prince Akiri Jola Johnson of Oguri Mangongo LGA. And in a related development, a group of women under the aegis of the Kogi Central Women's Development Association have backed calls for the recall of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. Now, they spoke in Lokoja on Thursday at a press conference where they condemned the senator's allegations of sexual harassment against Senate President Godswill Akpabio and said they were displeased with lacking representation for as long as up to 6 months.
The issues she's raised on sexual harassment.
Talking about sexual harassment, Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan is above 40 years. I find it very alarming that you are raising a sexual harassment issue without evidence. If she had brought evidence, trust me, the entire Kogites would have risen up to say no to Senator Akpabio's harassment. But you've been saying sexual harassment without basis. If you say you are being sexual harassed, what are the evidences and why is it now that she's bringing it up? She said it was a time some months ago, everything some months ago. If you are being sexual harassed, we, the entire Kogites, will rise up for her if she has evidence. We are asking, if you are being harassed and you have gone to the international community to allege somebody of sexual harassment, it should be backed up with proof and evidence. We are not going to be driven by emotions, crying. It's not going to solve this. We are saying, give us evidence where Senator Godswill Akpabio, the Senate President, harassed you sexually. Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan is not a baby. She's an adult. And as such, she would have had evidences where the Senate President either sexual harassed her by writing or by anything. But now you're just saying he sexual harassed you. We have given now weeks to present to the entire Kogi Central Senatorial District people where the evidence is. But till now, no evidence. And we cannot afford not to have a senator representing us.
Now we go on a short break, and when we get back, more from Kogi State. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Kogi State. The Kogi State Commissioner for Information and Communications has urged persons and groups campaigning for the re-election of Governor Ahmed Ododo to stop, saying the governor is setting his sights on the development of the state. Addressing newsmen in Lokoja on Thursday, Kingsley Fanwo noted that those behind the said campaigns should rather channel their energy to take Kogi State to greater heights, rather than being occupied with political rhetorics just a little over a year of service to the people.
Of political advocacy and support groups springing up here and there, supporting the chief servant of the state for the 2027 governorship election. For us, it is too early to start political campaigns. We are concentrating on ensuring that the good people of the states are well served under the leadership of the chief servant. He's been deliberate and intentional in ensuring that he focuses on agriculture, education, empowerment, and ensuring that Kogi State becomes a destination of choice for investors and high-profile investments, so as to be able to empower the people, get them engaged, and then get the youths properly empowered. And he's already doing that with training of hundreds of youths and empowering them with their working kits so that we can create not just a white-collar economy, but also a blue-collar economy and a pink-collar economy. So these are the key issues that he's focusing on. He's not going to be distracted by all of those political agitations at this point.
Now to court matters. The Oyo State government has withdrawn the criminal case against Oriyomi Hamzat, Naomi Silekunola, and Fasasi Abdullahi. Fasasi over the fatal stampede at Islamic High School, Basharun, in December 2024. Oyo State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice Abiodun Aikomo confirmed the development while addressing journalists after the court ruling. The Ibadan High Court struck out the case following the Attorney General's decision to withdraw it. The three defendants had been on trial for their alleged roles in the tragic stampede at a fun fair in Ibadan, which claimed the lives of over 30 people, most of them children. Away from that now, some residents and traders at the Dakata, Yankaba, Hadejia Road and Badawa areas of Kano metropolis were victims of an early morning fire outbreak, which devastated the Simura Multipurpose Market, a small-scale industrial hub in the Dakata area of Kano State. The inferno started around 4 a.m. in the early hours of Wednesday morning, destroying goods and property worth millions of naira and several factories engaged in nylon and plastics production. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu reports here.
A raging inferno has destroyed goods and properties at the Dakata Recycling Market in Kano State, known for plastic waste recycling, leather production, food processing, and general waste collection. Unfortunately, the swift reaction by the fire service didn't save the situation. Victims and survivors count their losses amid tears and pain, expressing sadness over the loss of their livelihoods and painting a bleak image of an unknown future. The victims and eyewitnesses narrate the ugly experience.
Wanda mun waye gari tun wajen karfe 4 gobara ta tashi a wannan guri da ake yin harkar ledoji da recycling machine ne da crushing na harkar ledoji. Babu shakka wannan gobara ta yi asarar kudade miliyoyi da al'umma suka yi, kuma ba yau aka fara irin wannan gobara ba. Muna roƙo Allah subhanahu wata'ala ya mayo waɗanda suka samu wannan ibtila'i, sannan muna kira a hukumance da hukuma su zo su taimaka mana a zo a zauna a gane meye matsalar irin wannan abubuwan da suke faruwa, sannan kuma idan abin ya faru a san ta yaya za a magance irin wannan nan gaba.
Da shugabanni da sarakai da gwamnoni da duk wani dai mai karfi a Kano don Allah ya taimaka a 'yan kwalema, Allah ya aiko mana da ibtila'in gobara, don Allah a taimaka. Akwai marayu masu yara ƙananu masu fi wata, yawanci mutane a nan ake ci a nan ake sha.
Injinan mu hudu ne, da injinan da kayan mutane da ba namu ba. Ubangiji Allah ka taimake mu, ku taimaka mana don girman Annabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallama. Mun tattara komai, mun sai da komai, recycling muka sai, ina jin ko wata ɗaya bai yi ba, amma ya kone yanzu babu. Ku taimaka mana don gafara Annabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Ta fita miliyan 100 ma, tunda kaga iya recycling din nan abinda muka saye shi, ina jin da gona da gida muka sayar da muka saye shi miliyan 50.
To da farko dai muna aiki, mun yi sahur kenan muna aiki, kawai sai muka ga wutan nepa tana season. Sai na cewa abokin aiki na kashe injin nan, wutan nan kar ta ba injin matsala. Wallahi duka a cikin minti 10 wuta hatta ba wa ɗayan kamfanin. To mun zo nan ana kokarin ɗebo wasu ledoji a nan gurin, kawai wani abu sai ya fashe, kawai ta harbo kan ledar. Shine wutar ta kama har ta kai ga wannan lokacin tana ci.
The complexity of the situation was exacerbated following the apprehension of an alleged looter caught trying to take advantage of the situation and was lynched by the angry crowd. Tension died down at the scene following the intervention of the police, who subsequently rescued the suspected thief.
I just had a bit and rushed to this place. I am seeing what happened, but the cause of the fire is not yet known. So my men are here, the DPO and his men, to make sure the place is secured, to avoid the hoodlums to take advantage of it. And as we are talking now, we have arrested one suspect who is trying to steal something around it.
For now, survivors and victims who have lost their properties are still in shock. What will happen next after this, only time will tell. In Jakarta, Kano, for News Central, Emmanuel Bagudu.
Side Nigeria. Artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming cybersecurity, bringing both opportunities and risks. On one hand, cybercriminals are exploiting AI to carry out more sophisticated attacks, while security teams are leveraging AI to enhance defensive measures. This ongoing battle is a major concern for businesses across Africa, especially those that have embraced digital transformation over the past decade. Research by Google's Threat Intelligence Group reveals that cybercriminals are using Google's AI models for malicious activities, including content generation, research, and strategy development. Here now to discuss this further, we're joined by a cybersecurity engineer, Alan Juma. Alan, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
You're welcome. So how have AI advancements changed the cybersecurity landscape for businesses and let's not forget cyber criminals as well? Can you explain how AI tools like Google's Gemini are being used to enhance cyber attacks?
Well, thank you. AI, we've seen both its positivity and negativity, especially in the cybersecurity field. We have seen a trend whereby cyber criminals are actually leveraging AI to do some of their nefarious activities. Some of this, what we are seeing is actually they are using enhanced threat development, whereby they're actually automating the process of coming up with bespoke malware specifically for such for organizations. For example, in the energy industry, in the financial sector. So they're using AI to come up with bespoke ransomware or malware to attack such organizations. On the flip side, as cybersecurity professionals, we've also adopted AI in that we are using AI to help us in improved decision making, automation of the threat identification, threat eradication, and also learning from it, as well as we are strengthening the access control and authentications in the cybersecurity field, as well as, of course, having proactive security as opposed to reactive security thanks to AI.
Well, Alan, just for context, what are some notable examples of AI-driven cyber attacks in recent years that we might have heard of?
Okay, I'll give you an example from Kenya. In the year 2023, Kenya suffered an AI-generated or AI-powered denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack. Basically, what that means is, let's say, for example, you have a door that only allows 2 people at a time. Distributed denial of service is whereby they will try fix 100 people to pass through the same door at the same time, denying the legitimate users of that particular service access to that service. So imagine that now on a multiplied scale because of AI, and that is what we saw in Kenya. Some key government facilities, like an online, where we access online government services, was actually rendered unavailable for almost up to a week. And this was not just such services, it was also other critical infrastructure. This is infrastructure that the entire country may depend on. For example, the railway system, people were not able to make bookings to access their trains or catch their trains to wherever they were going. As well as, as you're aware, maybe you may be aware, yes, Kenya is heavily reliant on mobile money transactions. So such services were unavailable for the users, and this caused a lot of havoc in the country, and all this because of AI-driven attacks. In this specific case, distributed denial of service attacks.
Well, Alan, here in Nigeria too, we're actually quite reliant on these kinds of processes for our finances, quite frankly. But how does human behavior impact security vulnerabilities in an AI-driven world like Nigeria and Kenya?
Well, the human factor, people usually say that the human aspect is the weakest link, but I disagree with that. What I say is an untrained individual, an untrained human, a human who's not aware of the threats is the weakest link. So you'll find that if you have one user who's aware of the threats that are there in the organization, even if they are AI-driven and difficult to detect, because they have been thoroughly trained, they can actually be able to detect such an attack early and spread it to their organizations. Now, the flip side is if you have a user who's unaware, who has no desire to learn about cybersecurity, or who has been enrolled for cybersecurity awareness courses, but for one reason or the other, they don't deem it useful or valuable to them. Such a user will be a weak link because they will click on these links. They will not have the awareness to detect such advanced persistent threats and highly convincing attacks. Once they click on such links, they can take down multi-million organizations and even multi-billion-dollar organizations.
Alan Juma, thank you very much for giving us your expert advice regarding AI and security. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Now moving on, the Rwanda-backed M23 armed group has seized control of a key mining town in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, according to security and local sources on Wednesday. Now, the group's latest offensive led to the evacuation of workers from the Bisie mine in Walikale, operated by Alphamin Mining Company, which produces cassiterite, the world's third largest tin ore supply. This marks another strategic gain for M23, intensifying concerns over regional stability and the safety of local communities. Now, once we're going to break, and when we get back, we've got more news coming your way. Welcome back. Now, efforts to end the ongoing war have seen Ukraine, Russia, and the United States engage in peace talks focusing on potential ceasefire, territorial disputes, and security guarantees for Ukraine. Democratic sources suggest some progress has been made, but major disagreements persist, particularly regarding Russia's continued military presence in occupied regions. The United States has reaffirmed its support for Ukraine's sovereignty while urging both sides to pursue a peaceful resolution. However, Ukraine remains firm in its demand for a full withdrawal of Russian troops, while Moscow insists on security guarantees and the lifting of sanctions. Business now. The United States is stalling the distribution of $2.6 billion in climate finance to South Africa, raising concerns that the funds may be withheld entirely. Recently, U.S. representatives blocked a $500 million disbursement from the World Bank-linked climate investment funds, which would have unlocked an additional $2.1 billion from other sources. A reconsideration of this funding may occur at upcoming CIF meetings in June. This delay could hinder South Africa's efforts to transition to green energy and reduce its reliance on coal, which currently powers over 80% of its electricity. And now sports. In a historic vote, Christy Coventry has been elected the 10th president of the International Olympic Committee. The 41-year-old Zimbabwean was chosen in a secret ballot of 7 candidates at the 144th IOC session being held in Costa Navarino, Greece, on Thursday, 20th of March, for an 8-year term of office. President-elect Coventry replaces outgoing President Thomas Bach, and who was first elected in 2013 and re-elected in 2021. She received 49 votes in the first round, exactly the number required for a majority from the 97 votes casted. She will be the first woman and the first African to serve as IOC president. President-elect Coventry will assume office after the handover from President Bach on Olympic Day, 23rd June. She is currently an IOC member and the Minister of Sports, Arts and Recreation in Zimbabwe. She has been the country's Minister of Sports since 2018. Additionally, she served as a Vice President of the International Surfing Federation from 2017 to 2024. The former swimmer was first elected as an IOC member as a member of the IOC Athletes Commission in 2013 and served in that role until 2021, when she was elected as an individual member.
The 144th IOC session has elected as the 10th President of the International Olympic Committee, Mrs. Kirsty Coventry.
Dear President and my very dear colleagues, this is an extraordinary moment. As a 9-year-old girl, I never thought that I would be standing up here one day, getting to give back to this incredible movement of ours. This is not just a huge honor, but it is a reminder of my commitment to every single one of you, that I will lead this organization with so much pride, with the values at the core, and I will make all of you very, very proud and hopefully extremely confident in the decision that you've taken today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and now we've got some work together.
That's all this hour. But before we go, let's take you through a look at some of the major stories we brought your way. The National Assembly has endorsed President Tinubu's proclamation of state of emergency in Rivers State. And a coalition of opposition political leaders has announced a merger and opposed the emergency rule in Rivers State. We also told you that M23 rebels have seized key mining town in eastern DR Congo. To remember, you may send your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on your screens now. And do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.